Hi and welcome to my Python YouTube channel. It's awesome to have you here. If you like this video, a thumbs up would be great. And make sure to subscribe for future videos. I also have a blog at prosperacoder.com with lots of cool stuff, so feel free to check it out. In the previous part we added some colors to our screens. However, except for the text color on the labels, we didn't touch the widgets. Let's add some styling to them too. By styles, I mean colors and other properties that have a visual effect. As I have already mentioned multiple times, in the final version of the app, all class rules that are shared by more than one screen will be moved to one file and referenced from there. This way we will be able to define their styles only in one place. For the time being, though, we'll have to repeat the same code for each screen if we want the same styles. Let's start with the buttons. Generally, we want all buttons to look similar for the sake of consistency. Have a look at the Ready button in the settings screen. Here is the final version of the screen. Here's the Ready button. Okay, and here's our current version. Fine. So we can compare. The final version and our current version. As you can see, the colors of both the text and the background are different. Let's make the button look like in the final version then. In the class rules, above the root widget, we'll add a custom button class. The background color of the button is going to be a shade of red, so let's name the class Red button. Then let's use an instance of this new button instead of the regular button that we now have. So here's the code. Let's make some cleanup here. So here we have our class rules. These are our labels. Then we have some text inputs down here. Okay. Then we have checkboxes over here. And now here, let's add the button. So, buttons. And now here's our red button. It inherits from button. And let's define the button. Now the background color should be a shade of red. So let's set background color to 0.8001. This is a shade of red. Now the text color should be a shade of yellow. So we use the color property to set the text color. Now the text should be in bold type with font size 18. So bold, true, font size 18. And now the button should have a fixed size and be horizontally centered. So let's set size hint to none. Let's specify the exact size, so 200 by 40, and position, pass hint, center x 0.5, so it's horizontally centered. Good. And now we can use our red button down in the code where our Ready button is. So instead of button, let's use red button. Now we don't need these three properties here because they are already defined in the class rule. So we only need the text property. Fine. Let's save and run. Now our button looks much better. It looks exactly the same as in the final version. Now styling the other buttons is easy. All you have to do is copy the red button class rule with all the canvas instructions in it and add it to the other screens with buttons, so all the other screens to be precise. After that, you have to replace all the instances of button with the red button. If any properties should differ from the ones set in the class rule, remember that you can override them on the instance. There's one thing about the buttons in the race screen, and in particular about the third one. Let's have a look at the final version again. Here is our race screen. Here you can see that the third button is much shorter. This means that we have to override not only the pass hint property on that button, but also the size property. The size of the button should be 70 by 40. Okay? And now let's have a look at the code of the race screen. So we need to open our race Kivy file. And first of all, we have to add the red button class rule. So let's copy it from our settings screen. Red button, copy, and use it here. And now let's use the red button in our code instead of the buttons. So where are the buttons? Over here. Now the first one says end game. It should be a red button. Now we don't need the font size, size hint, and size properties because they are in class rule. But we do have to override the pass hint property. Next, let's replace the second button here with red button. It says instructions, and just like before, we don't need the font size, size hint, and size properties here. And the next button, this is the short one, it says sound. Here we have to override the size property too. So we have text, we don't need font size, we don't need size hint, but what we do need is size. It should be 70 by 40, and pass hint. Fine, let's save. Let's open the race.py file and let's run it. Now, if you resize the window slightly, you will see it better. Here we have the three buttons. These are our red buttons, and the third one is shorter. Okay, now let's have a look at the bets screen. So let's open the bets.py and bets.kv files. First of all, we'll have to copy our class rule. So red button, let's copy it from here, for example, and paste it here. Let's say somewhere here. Okay, so here we have our red button, and now we have to use the red button in our code instead of the button over here. And now we don't need size, hint, size, and pass hint because these are defined in the class rule. So we can just get rid of them, right? Let's save and run the code. Now we have the red button here, so it works. And finally, the results screen. So let's open the results.py file and the results.kv file. Let's copy the red button class rule. Somewhere here near the top. Good. And let's use a red button instead of button in the code. our next raise button is here. So it's a red button now. And again, we don't need size hint size or pass hint. Let's get rid of them. Save, run. And again, you can see that now we have the red button over here. Finally, the game over screen. Let's open the game over Pi and game over Kivy files. Let's copy the red button class rule somewhere here. And let's use the red button now in the code. Here we have two buttons. So the first button is over here, the second button is over here. The first button says play again, the second button says quit. And we have to specify the text naturally. And we're gonna override the pass hint property. So we don't need size hint and size, but we do need pass hint because we want them to be centered vertically. And the same here. Let's save. Let's run. Here's our game over screen with our two red buttons. Good. And now let's have a look at the other widgets that we definitely have to handle, the checkboxes, or rather the radio buttons, because it's how the checkboxes are used in our project. Now, the radio buttons are hardly visible. In the final version, the circles that you can check are filled, so let's do it now. The radio buttons in two screens, the settings screen and the batch screen. Let's start with the former. You'll find two classes defined in the class rules section in the settings Kivy file. Player radio button and condition radio button. If you run the app and resize the window slightly, so settings.py, you will see that there's a little circle in the middle where you can click to check the radio button. The circles are hardly visible here. You can check them. So this is checked, this is unchecked. Now when unchecked, the circle is hardly visible. Let's replace it with a filled circle that you can see without difficulty. Now let's start with the player radio button class. So we want to draw something, so we need canvas instructions. Canvas. First, let's set the color to black. So, color 000, this is black, and full opacity. Now the ellipse should be a circle. It should sit in the very center of the widget, but when you specify the position of an ellipse, you actually specify the position of its bottom left corner, not the center. But knowing that the radius of the circle is 20, it's easy to calculate the coordinates of its center. We must remember to set the size property as well. It's also easy to calculate. So let's draw an ellipse. Here's the position, self-center x minus 10, self-center y minus 10. And size is 20 by 20. So if the radius is 10, the bottom left corner of the ellipse is 10 pixels to the left and 10 pixels in the downward direction from the center of the radio button. The size is twice the radius in both directions. Now let's save this and run our settings.py app. Okay, so if we have done everything correctly so far, we should now see filled circles, much more visible, which we can't check though. Actually, we can check them, but you won't see the blue dot that appears when the radio button is checked. This is because the blue dot is drawn before the circle, but this can be easily fixed. We can change the order in which things are drawn. Assuming we use the canvas instruction, we just have to use one of the other canvas instructions instead. Apart from canvas, there are canvas before and canvas after instructions. So let's change canvas to canvas before. And now it should work. So now we can check the radio buttons. Now let's take of these 3 radio buttons over here, which should be styled the same way. So let's go to the settings.kv file. And our condition radio button class rule, let's also add the same canvas instruction that will draw the circles. So again, canvas before, the color and the ellipse. And now, if we save this and run the app again, we should see the radio buttons here and here. Good. And now let's go to the batch screen. So here we have our player slug button class rule, and let's run the batch.py app first. So as you can see here, the radio buttons are hardly visible. There's somewhere here. Yeah, I found it. Here, 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 etc. So let's copy the same canvas instruction from here and add it here. Good. Save, and let's run the batch.py app. Now, as you can see, the radio buttons are much more visible. You know where to click. Okay, that's it for this video. If you like it, a thumbs up would be great. Also, make sure to subscribe for future videos. If you want to leave a comment or ask a question, you're welcome to do so. Thanks for watching.